It's 6 o'clock, and I will call this January 9th, 2023 meeting of the Chelmsford Select Board to order. Would you please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Ken, first up we have public service announcements.
So our first one, the Northern Middlesex Council on Government Envision 2050 study. And this is the NEMCOG, which is what Northern Middlesex Council on Government stands for, is embarking on their Envision 2050, an update to the Northern Middlesex Metropolitan Planning Organization's long-range regional transportation plan. This is an opportunity for residents to help shape the future of the transportation in our region. If you go to the town website and on tonight's meeting, there's a QR code if you click on the attachments, or you can go to www.nmcog.org/envision 2050 for more information. We have second announcement, Northern Middlesex Council on Government's North Chelmsford Traffic Study presentation and public input is scheduled for January 23rd's Select Board meeting. And then our last announcement is nomination papers for the annual town election. Those are, the town election this year will be held on April 4th, Tuesday, April 4th. And we have nomination papers are available now, and the last day to obtain nomination papers is February 10th. The last day for papers to be filled and filed back to the Board of Registers is February 14th, and last day to register to vote for this town election is March 24th. We have a one Select Board member for a 3-year term, 2 school committee members for 3-year terms, 1 town moderator for a 3-year term, 2 planning board members for a 3-year term, 1 planning board associate member for a 2-year term, 1 board of health member for 3 years, 3 trustees of public library members for 3 years, 1 cemetery commission member for 3 years, and we have at least 5. We have 5 seats for all 11 precincts for 3-year terms, and precinct 4 and 6. 4 has a 2 for a 1-year unexpired seat, and precinct 6 has 1 for a 2-year unexpired seat.
Thank you, Ken. Next up, we have public input. Is there anyone who would like to speak during public input? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone here or in the Zoom room, so we'll go on to committee vacancies.
So for this week, January 9th of 2023, we have the following committee vacancies available. The Arts and Technology Education Fund has 1 unexpired 3-year term. Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee is looking to fill 1 3-year term. CCA Advisory Committee has 2 seats available. Those are 1-year terms. Commissions on Disabilities has 1 3-year term. Community Action Program Committee has 4 1-year terms. Community Preservation Fund Committee has 1 3-year term. Council on Aging is looking to fill 1 unexpired 3-year seat and 2 3-year terms. Cultural Council, 1 unexpired 3-year term. Holiday Decorating Committee has 2 1-year terms. The parade.
Already expired.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
Holiday decorating.
I meant it should be,
expired.
yeah, it should be 23.
23. Parade Committee, all applicants are welcome. Those are 1-year terms expiring each July 31st. The Permanent Building Committee has 1 3-year term. Recycling Committee has 1 1-year term. Roberts Field Advisory Committee has 1 1-year term. If you're interested in serving on any of these town boards or committees, please complete an online application available on the town website. And if you have any questions or need further information, you can reach out to the town manager's office here, Town Hall, 978-250-5202, or send an email to TM Office, that's Town Manager's Office, tmoffice@chelmsfordma.gov.
Thank you. Next up, we have the 1-day license for the Armenian Church. Do we have anyone here from the church?
I think I saw Bruce in the...
Hello.
Hi, Bruce. We just need your name and address for the record, please.
Okay, Bruce K. Janian, 41 Blackberry Fields Road in Drake, Mass.
Okay. Is there anything you want to say about the event, or?
Well, I just wanted to say that, it'll be the first time since COVID that we've been able to have our Kumpadagantan, or it's a Mardi Gras event, pre-Lent, just as Lent is kicking off. So we're certainly looking forward to having it on the 18th of February.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions?
So I'll make a motion for a one-day all-alcohol beverage license for the church Mardi Gras event to be held on February 18th, 2023 at the St. Martin and Armenian Church at 180 Old Westford Road.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. You're all set, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Take care.
Okay, next up, we have the discussion with council regarding the licensing and the brick house incident. So I guess by way of introduction, if you saw the last meeting discussion, I think there were questions about if the board wanted to proceed with a disciplinary hearing, what is that process? I think there were also questions related to, is a disciplinary hearing necessary to get things on the record if the board doesn't want to pursue discipline? So I think those were kind of the two main topics floating around. There were some individual questions. I'll let people.
Okay,
I
so,
suppose.
I can answer the second question first pretty
Okay.
easily. In order to get something on the record, the board certainly can hold a disciplinary hearing, right? And there would be, a record of what transpires as part of that meeting, and that would be on the record. But also, if the board enters into discussions with a particular license holder that results in an action plan, and I did review the hearing from the last meeting, and there was discussion of an action plan. That would also be able to be something that would get into the record. And I was reviewing the statute, and there's a provision in General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 10A, that actually requires the local licensing authority, which in this instance would be the Select Board, to file an annual report with the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission, containing a list of all violations that came to the LLA's attention over the previous year and their actions and findings thereto. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to take a disciplinary action every time there's been something that's brought to your attention. What it means is that you've got to provide a report to the ABCC out of every instance in what action or whether any action was taken with regards to those. I certainly think that entering into an action plan with a license holder that actually corrects the issues, that were the subject of the complaint would fall within, the category of actions taken as a result of the complaint, and that's something that would then be reported to the EBCC. So one way or another, there would be a record that is going to be created as part of this process. In terms of how the disciplinary process would move forward, there's really nothing formally, set forth in terms of what needs to be done, other than, you have to provide notice to the license holder in advance. I noticed that there was a question regarding whether or not you could require employees of the license holder to come and provide testimony to the board. In Chapter 138, Section 12A, it states that the local license authority may at any time make investigation on its own initiative as to the compliance with licensing requirements. So I think that would give you the authority to, at minimum, request that employees that have knowledge of a particular situation come in front of the board and provide testimony as to exactly what transpired. I'm not suggesting that's necessary in this instance, but I do think it would be within your purview to request that. And I think it would be in your purview if you made such request and the license holder declined to provide those employees to the board for that testimony, that you could make a negative inference as part of that. I did want to note also General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 23, which states when a license holder fails to maintain compliance with Chapter 138 and the provisions of its license, the local license authority may, after a hearing, modify, suspend, revoke, or cancel such license. And that, again, is permissive language. The local license authority may do any of those things. There's no requirement for you to take any specific action with regard to any specific claim. And so there's no liability to the licensing authority for not taking action with regard to a claim. Now, that being said, obviously, you want to make sure that you're taking everything very seriously and addressing things in an appropriate manner, which may include, holding a disciplinary hearing, or it may include working out an action plan to address situations.
Any other question?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So if we were to hold a disciplinary hearing, we can rule on things other than just what's on their license, right? I mean, like, their license just tells them capacity and their hours, but we could rule on, like, serving somebody who's intoxicated or something like that.
Right, so what you would be reviewing is whether or not they're in compliance with Chapter 138, which contains a list of things in which a license holder is not allowed to do, which includes specifically serving intoxicated persons. So that is something that you certainly could address as part of that process.
Pat, may I ask a follow-up to that before you shoot next? So, Paul, how does that relate? Because I know Pat cited this section I have up on the screen right now from the board's liquor policy.
Mm-hmm.
So are the licensees adhere to this policy? Are they given this policy as part of the license?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
So yes,
So
you would
anything
certainly
within-
be able to reference this as part of any proceeding as well.
Along with Chapter 138?
Correct.
So you said we're required to report to the ABCC. Is that's on an annual basis? Is that at the end of the year or
It's,
fiscal year?
yeah, you know what, February 15th, so every February 15th, you need to provide an annual report. to the
Okay.
For the
ABC.
previous year, for the previous
For the
calendar year.
previous
Calendar
year.
year.
Calendar year.
Yep.
Okay, so if we provide that report and we don't take any action, does that set a precedent for us that next year, if we provide a report and we take severe action, would the ABCC have any concerns about not handling things consistently?
I mean, I think that the ABCC may use that as part of its process to make a determination, but at the end of the day, each particular incident is unique, right? And the ABCC, if there was, and again, that would only occur if you were to take disciplinary action against a license holder and they appealed it to the ABCC. ABCC, first and foremost, is going to review and determine whether or not there was a violation, right? And if there was a violation, more likely than not, they're going to uphold the determination of the select board in terms of whatever punishment, results from that process, whether it's a suspension or a revocation or something along those lines. So I mean, I think that it might be something that could be taken into account, but I don't think it has a tremendous amount of precedential value.
Okay.
Can I just ask I just want to be clear. So in order to document this, we can either do it via the annual, or if we went into a disciplinary hearing, document it via that.
Well, it's not an either/or.
Okay.
If you go into a disciplinary hearing, that's a separate process, but you would still need to document it
Right.
in the annual report to the ABCC. So the report to the ABCC, you have to indicate, specifically what was reported to you as the licensing authority.
Right.
And then whatever action you took as a result.
And if
Whether it was no action, whether it was, in consultation with the license holder, developing an action plan, or whether it went to a disciplinary hearing, all of those, would be things that would be part of that report.
And if this happened mid-year, July 4th,
It wouldn't get reported to the ABCC
right, until the end of the year.
until the end of the year, except if you do move forward with a disciplinary hearing and actually take some form of discipline, that, there is I think, a 5-day appeal period by the license holder to the ABCC. So at that instance, they would get it sooner, obviously.
Okay.
But-
And do we need to update our policies or anything for this annual report requirement?
I haven't reviewed your policies.
okay.
I don't
I
know.
mean, that's a requirement. I don't think we put requirements in our policies.
Have we ever filed one before?
Did you say we only have to file it when there's a violation?
To file an annual report, let me see,
When we're made aware.
When we're, right. I thought you said it was when we've had a violation or have been made aware of one, that's when we have to report
Correct.
it.
yep.
So if there's no report filed, then do you have to file a report if you have no violations?
It doesn't state that.
Okay.
I don't believe that you do.
Okay.
It says, said report shall contain a list of all violations of law by licensees who came to their attention and their actions and findings with reference thereto.
It's my opinion, it was a thorough investigation done by the police department, the fire department, to everybody that was involved there, and they both came in and testified to us that they were happy, they put a plan together, and I don't think we have to go any further, that's only my opinion.
I think the further step that was identified last time was getting the action plan and reviewing it with Charlie Mickle. And I think the question was, do we have to have a hearing in order to do that?
Right.
And it
No.
sounds like the reason to have a hearing is if a board member wanted to make a case for disciplinary action.
Correct. If you want to suspend or revoke a license, then you need to go forward with a hearing.
But to formally have a process that we've gone through and put into the record and also reported to the state, a hearing's not necessary to wrap a bow around that being in the record.
Correct.
So are there any other questions for Paul at this point? So I think the fundamental question is, are there any board members that want to pursue disciplinary action? And if not, then we talk about what do we want to do from here?
Yeah, I'd just still like to see the corrective action plan, that's all.
Okay, so you don't feel a need to pursue disciplinary
No,
action?
not at this time, no.
And George has already said he doesn't, Ken?
I don't see a need to have disciplinary action, and I'm actually fine if they submit their plan to the chiefs and they're fine with it. I don't feel like I need to see it, so, but if Mark says we should see it, that's fine.
I absolutely think we should see it.
Yeah, I do too.
In particular, if you're going to be including it as part of your annual report, you should have reviewed it in advance.
Being the licensing
If they
authority,
submitted-
I think
yeah.
it's our obligation to do it.
Okay, so if they submit an action plan to us, then I'd be fine with that.
Pat?
I just think to set a precedent that if somebody goes this far and, as far as violations, that we should have a disciplinary hearing. I can sense that that's not the sense of the rest of the board, but I definitely think we need to have an action plan at the very least and have them in here to present it to us so that we can ask them questions about it.
I didn't go yet. Oh, did you go ahead? Did you want to say something?
Go ahead.
So, I'm in the same camp of we need to do something formal, like review the action plan and not just let it go. I don't feel the need for a disciplinary hearing toward disciplinary action. And if we can go through this process and, I think by the virtue of the fact that we've called Brick House in here and now we're going to follow up, we're saying this is not okay. I just personally don't feel that this warrants a disciplinary hearing. If you want to have a hearing towards discipline, then we should have the hearing. If you're not thinking that you want, if the hearing was simply to get stuff on the record, it sounds like we don't have to have the hearing to do that. So I guess that's the fundamental question, Pat, is I agree with you. I don't think we should set a precedent that just says it's okay, the fire and the police chief looked at it, we have purview over the license, and we should make sure we're comfortable with where things are. And I like the path that Mark was headed down. So I guess that's the fundamental question is, are you looking to pursue discipline?
Well, I can tell there's not a sense from the rest of the board to pursue discipline, and I don't know. I mean, it would
Okay.
probably depend on what's in the action plan. I mean, I don't know what's in it.
I think it's premature to say that.
So,
As far as discipline goes, I want to see all the facts. Again, I want to see how their corrective action lines up
But-
with what occurred, and then make a determination from that point whether or not there needs to be
so
discipline.
Attorney,
That's
But
how I
if-
see
but
it.
if I could, I mean, you can do that as part of this, just because you have a disciplinary hearing doesn't mean you have to issue discipline.
No, I get that, but I still think we don't
And
need to
it's-
go into a hearing like that in order to get it on the record, so I think we should just sit down, go through the corrective action plan, find out how well the licensee responds to what happened in detail, in good corrective actions, and that can go a long way towards, in my opinion, closing this out.
Paul Haverty, can we take an interim step and kind of gather some more facts and then confirm a decision then as to whether we go to hearing?
Of course, yeah,
I mean, are you
if-
more comfortable with that, Pat, to
Sure.
make a more informed decision? I think that's what Mark is saying, too.
Right, I mean, your approach here is that you're going to move forward with the action plan approach, but if you do not get an action plan that satisfies you, or if additional information comes up that, changes how you feel about it, you would obviously still have the option of moving forward with a disciplinary hearing.
So what else does the board want to see from the Brick House leadership besides the action plan? Is there anything else that we would like them to come prepared to discuss?
I would hope that would be comprehensive,
Okay,
quite frankly.
Yeah.
okay. And I guess, Paul, can we get some help inviting them to come?
Yeah, I'll work with Chief Spinney and,
I'd prefer if they could come during, like, our next meeting, or I think we should just move this along.
yes, 23rd meeting.
And especially if we have to report to the state, I'd like to show that we're not letting it fester.
Because after our next meeting, we only have one more meeting, right?
Right, we have the January 23rd and the 30th, and then February 13th,
So two
or
more.
I forget if that's the exact date, but.
Did the chiefs go over the action plan with,
I haven't seen a draft of the action plan, so I'll
would
follow up with
you
Chief. I'll
ask
do
the
that.
chiefs
I'll
if
do
they did that?
tomorrow.
Because if they did, there's no sense in them even coming. I mean, if they
Well, we
filed.
want them here anyway, but to review. the
Answer any
plan,
questions.
Answer any questions the
Yeah.
board
Yeah.
may have, yeah.
I agree with that. Well, and I mean, I think that the Brick House should be the ones to present the plan to us.
Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, I just want to know if the chiefs did review it with them, that's all.
I'm sure they will, I don't know if they've gotten it yet, and Paul doesn't know either, so. Okay, is there anything else on this topic?
I will make, after that last incident, I asked 4 other restaurant owners in town, and 1 in Lowell. And I really feel for these owners, because, they say at the end of the night, they empty the bathroom trash and they're full of nips. It's getting expensive to go out and have a drink, so a lot of people, load up in their pockets, and so now you sit there and you say, well, they can't serve someone who's intoxicated. Well, guy walks in, he seems fine, you serve him 2 drinks, and he makes 4 trips to the bathroom with nips. I feel bad for the bar owners, because like, I don't even know how you control it at this point if you get,
Maybe
Yeah.
we should make nips illegal.
I don't know how you do that, but
Some towns have.
maybe
They have in
absolutely.
Falmouth.
Illegal in a package store?
More for litter reasons, yeah.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Well,
Yeah.
we've
Those
got,
are
we've
made-
gotten complaints in
Water
town
bottles,
about,
illegal,
about
too.
nip
Yeah.
trash
Oh, yeah.
and litter.
There's a liquor store in
Plastic
Littleton that
bags.
used to, there was a liquor store in Littleton that offered if you
We've done
brought in 10 empty nips, you got a free scratch ticket.
Oh, that's better than a free
Yeah.
nip.
But-
Okay. Is there anything else that we need Attorney Haverty for? Do you want him to stay for the rest of the licensing discussions, or?
I think that's up to us to decide, so.
Okay.
All set?
Thank you.
All right, have a good night.
Thank you.
So, Paul, we have 2 topics on licensing.
Yeah, this followed up
Just put them in
your-
context for people.
Yeah, to put it in context, over a year ago, the legislature, Massachusetts State Legislature reviews process procedures, and then in every decennial census, the ABCC adjusts the town's licensing quotas based upon population. And Chelmsford exceeded another threshold. So over a year ago, the board was notified of that fact, that the board has an additional off-premise retail all alcohol license to grant. At that time, the board imposed a stay, I guess, or a moratorium on the issuance of that license for a one-year period. That one-year period lapsed. Christina Bruce, our administrative assistant, pointed that out to the board and me, that period had lapsed. And so what the board did last month is they decided to continue the moratorium to the end of March, but then asked that the discussion take place at the meeting this evening, and that we send out notice to the stakeholders. So I sent out notice to the police chief, obviously, and to the Chelmsford Business Association as stakeholders of this, and then we, obviously have input from these meetings. So that's where we are with the all off-premise all alcohol license. During that discussion over a month ago, the issue also came up that, well, the board also has the ability to issue 8 off-premise wine and malt beverage licenses, and the town historically has not issued those, and so the board said, well, when you place this on the agenda at the January 9th, 2023 meeting, let's discuss both items. So that's what we have before us this evening.
And I think on the first one, on the off-premises licenses, at least Mark and maybe someone else had asked if we could get some input from Chief Spinney,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And
He
he's in
is-
the Zoom
he's in
room,
the
so.
Zoom room. Yep.
Do you want to ask your question, Mark, or?
Is he there?
He is, I don't know why he's not.
Good evening, Chief. I
Oh,
can
he's
see
just
him.
not on the,
So we talking about the one off?
the one off-premise.
Okay, we can see you now, Chief.
How are you, Chief Spinney?
Just, you guys, your sound keeps cutting out on my end, so if I miss something, my apologies.
Okay, I know that we have the ability to issue another license, and it looks like, when I look at the rationale, it looks more geographical from our perspective and so forth and so on. But is there anything from your perspective that we should consider as far as either issuing it or not issuing it?
Well, with regards to my perspective, it's really very narrow. I'm focusing on public safety, obviously, and that all ordinances and applicable laws are adhered to. So that being the case, as long as a proposed entity was to abide by all guidelines, state, local, et cetera, I am not opposed to the expansion from 7 to 8 in a town the size of Chelmsford. And I know there's a lot of concerns about proximity to other businesses, et cetera, but that's just not my purview,
Right.
and it's not my concern.
So nothing preemptively, it would only be something reactively if we issued that and there was some violations or whatever.
Yeah, like in any case of any existing license, I would feel the same. If we had reason to believe that somebody was not adhering to applicable local and state laws and guidelines and requirements, then that would be a concern. But for me to, at this point, arbitrarily be opposed to a expansion of one license for this community, that's just not my thought at this time.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
My opinion hasn't changed. I think that we're fine with what we have. One of the ones that has been in play for the last 4 or 5 years is now going from a little store in Vinyl Square to a 16,000 square foot liquor store on Princeton Street. And it's been closed since, and I don't hear anybody complaining about they haven't been able to buy any beverages, so I just, with the economy being the way it has been and whatever, I just don't think it's, you know, I don't think it's necessary to bring the issue of the new license, another license. Just my opinion.
Anybody else?
I agree with George. I think we're fine the way we are. I'd suggest continuing that moratorium for indefinitely, quite frankly. I think it opened such a can of worms if we were to open that up to a.
What can of worms? I
Oh,
need help with that.
I think we would have.
You know, and the reason I ask, and the reason I raised the question last time is there's a formula that says what your population can support.
Right.
Right? So from an economic standpoint, I think the state works through that formula. And, you know, we don't restrict the number of vigilar licenses for pizza places or salons. And I just am left with the same question of, are we just restricting, are we making a decision to restrict free enterprise based on an analysis that the state's done that says the town can support it?
Could I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
a tint on that? So the
Sure.
state, I'm sure, and I was thinking about this over the weekend, uses a formula that says based on population, you hit it the next level, you get another license, right?
Yeah, one
Yeah.
per 5,000, it looks like.
Yeah. However, we're so close to New Hampshire that most of the people I know go to New Hampshire, which makes it probably even harder for Chelmsford liquor stores.
But I look at it the other way.
I'm just saying, question the state
We're
formula.
so close to New Hampshire, if it's not convenient to buy in Chelmsford, they are going to go to New Hampshire, or I'm going to go a mile down the road to the package store in Westford from my house.
I
You
agree
know what
with
I'm
that
saying?
comment, but
It's-
all I'm saying is with the state formula of 5,000 per license,
Mm-hmm.
as you get closer to the border, I'm curious, like, does that hold? I mean, if you're in downtown Boston, I get it, 5,000 per person downtown Boston's, but I'm only 8 minutes to the local to the New Hampshire State Liquor Store. That's, whether I go there or I try to fight through Drum Hill, you know what I mean? So I'm just saying that
I
it
get
twists
it.
the formula a little bit, because you can't count the way the state's counting head for head, or however they're doing it, because it's substantial, not substantial, but, you can save some money if you're buying a volume in New Hampshire. So I think that adds a little twist to the state formula. That's all.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
I'll just say, when I look at the map and where we have them, it seems pretty spread. It seems like we have pretty good coverage in town.
We
That's
do.
the only thing I'd say. I mean, I'm not against it, but I've got concerns too, if we did add another one, and like George brought out, we've got another large one going in, Princeton, and, we want to, I guess, keep everybody happy, so to speak, too. I don't know.
So would you extend it, I guess, another, till the end of the year, like we did last year, and then just
Yeah,
look at it
probably.
again?
I
And by
just-
that time, the one in North Chelmsford will be open, and for what it's worth, when I have a choice to go to New Hampshire or Drum Hill, I go to Drum Hill just because I like the store.
I like the
and the-
selection better at Drum Hill, too, so I go to Drum Hill.
I used to go there, too.
Although they got rid of their cigars, I think.
But that said,
Go for the,
What happened to the
go down
cigars?
and someone else.
not that I
Cigars
drink,
are
not that I
important.
drink much anymore, but
And even in that layout, I mean, where would you put one? Over by Friendship Park? Yeah, and let me ask another question, that aside. If someone were to come forward, an entrepreneur or somebody, and say, I am requesting that you relook at your license because I want to put in this building at this location, you can always be open to that, correct? Even though if we say we got a 1-year moratorium, or is that?
You
does
have to
that-
open it to everybody, right?
Yeah, if you opened it open to everybody, and if the board denied it, it could be appealed to the ABCC. And as
Right.
certain members of this board, we've had appeals. Remember when
I
they
don't,
wanted to
I
put one
don't,
at,
I don't think we could entertain a one-off request without opening it to
Right.
Right.
everybody.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like the idea of waiting
I
a
agree.
year take a look at what this 16,000 square foot facility does and what that does to serve the town's needs and so forth. And if anything comes up during during 23, we can discuss it at the end or at the beginning of 24.
I agree.
I'm okay with that. So we would need a motion.
Madam Chair, can I make a statement?
Sure.
I just want to be clear with the board and everyone watching. I am in no way proposing, excuse me, or advocating for the expansion. I'm just trying to make it the point that as police chief, my role here is narrowly defined.
We
Focusing on-
understand.
Yeah. So, just wanted to
Definitely
make that
understand, yeah.
point. Thank you.
Yep, understood. So we need a motion then. To
I'll make a
extend.
motion to put a 1-year hold on our on-premise resale alcohol license.
It would be to extend the moratorium till December 31st of 2023.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to extend the moratorium till December 31st, 2023 for the on-premise retail alcohol license.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
It should have been off-premise, but that's okay.
Off-premise is what you meant.
the off-premise?
Yep.
Off-premise, yeah.
Motion amended.
Amended.
Okay, so next up, we have the discussion regarding the unused wine and malt beverages off-premises licenses. And these would be for things like supermarkets and things like that,
Could be
Gas
for anything.
stations.
gas
Well,
stations.
it could be for its standalone.
Yeah,
Be a standalone. There was one in, from
but it's
Chelmsford
beer,
Street
it's
years
beer
ago.
and wine only.
Right.
Yeah,
What's
Okay.
one where, Paul?
Chelmsford Street, years back.
Yeah, but not,
No, but
not since I've been on the board.
No, I'm saying years back. No, but the question was, could it be, as Pat mentioned, it could be a standalone.
It's beer and wine, though.
Beer and wine, yeah.
And I think the police were,
And this is,
Against that.
this is the one that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, it's,
This is the one that relates to the policy on mixed-use package
Yeah.
store licenses that I have up on the screen. Chief Spinney, was there anything that you wanted to add on this one?
I would have some concerns with combination usage. However, with the standalone example that was brought up, excuse me, back on Chelmsford Street a few years ago, I actually had no opposition to that. That if he had proper security in place and whatnot. Again, it would be case by case. I would have less concerns with a standalone that met guidelines and requirements. However, I would not be readily in support of any type of combination.
Okay, thank you.
everyone that's come in front of us since I've been on the board, which is 14 years, has been denied because of, and I think mostly by the police department as far as coverage is concerned. If you get, I mean, because if you issue one, how are you going to stop any of them, the rest of them? So, I mean.
So is the fundamental question whether we want to modify our policy or not? Is that what we're asking?
Well, I guess we'd have to modify our policy. Well, we wouldn't have to, if it could be a standalone with just beer and wine.
Right.
But, and, we've had requests for that, too.
Yeah, but they've all been denied
Right.
almost by a majority, by unanimously. And the police department, that's why I know Jimmy's trying to be, whatever.
Well, the agenda topic is regarding mixed-use off-premises licenses. So I think the question that came up the last time was, well, while we're at it, should we have this discussion about this policy that we have, and do we want to revisit it? And what I'm hearing is, I don't think we do. I think we just want to let the policy stand. Is that correct?
That would be what I'd want to do,
That
yeah.
would be mine, too.
Okay, so then we'll just move on.
Sounds good.
All right. I think Board Member Dixon is going to recuse himself for the next one. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
And I will let you introduce this one, Paul.
Yeah, Paul McKinley, the town's contracted licensed site professional from Weston and Sampson, is on the Zoom virtual connection this evening. He's here to report upon the latest quarterly sampling up at 54 Richardson Road. These samples were done in November, and he's provided a PowerPoint that he's going to review to you that kind of gives you some trend analysis. So, good evening, Paul, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Yeah, good evening. Similar to Chief Spini, I'm having trouble every once in a while. Your audio goes out. I think it might be on your end. So if there's some connection issues, I apologize in advance.
And so let's just make sure we're all close to the microphones if people are having an issue with that.
And is there any way to share my screen here? I was going to put up a there it is.
I've got it
Perfect.
up.
Awesome, perfect, thank you very much. So just to set the stage a little bit, again, just a brief overview of where we're at. There's, again, contaminants at 54 Richardson Road, these PFAS forever chemicals. In order to address those, we installed and began operating a remedial system, a pump and treat remedial system with one recovery well. Operation began on July 5th of this year. And since then, we've done two comprehensive groundwater monitoring rounds to determine or help evaluate how the progress of the system has been coming along. We had one in August, which demonstrated some pretty significant reductions in the.
Paul, we just lost your sound.
Event in November.
Paul?
Yes.
Could you back up a sentence or two because we lost your sound?
Oh, okay, yeah, it sounds like the issue might be on both sides. So, again, remedial system started operating in July 5th of this year. We had a groundwater monitoring event, comprehensive quarterly event that happened in August, which showed some substantial reductions in the contaminant concentrations in groundwater at the site. And I'm here to report tonight on November results, the second quarterly event after the system started. So if you actually jump to the next slide, I can dive into a little bit of the data. So November event, we actually sampled 29 monitoring wells or piezometers. Piezometers are essentially, metal pipes put into Cold Spring Brook, essentially the same to monitor groundwater quality. And of those 29 monitoring wells, 18 had exceedances of the Mass DP standard for the what's termed as the PFAS 6 compounds, regulated compounds, and that standard is 20 parts per trillion, so very, very low. But again, the good news is the remedial system seems to be operating as designed. 19 of the 29 monitoring wells showed a decreasing trend, and really the ones that didn't show a decreasing trend, it really was, what I would say it was within the range of, statistical sort of, probability range. As an example of that, monitoring well 1, which has historically been our highest well, with a
We lost your sound again.
1,100 parts per trillion.
Paul,
Yep.
we lost your sound again.
Right about when you broke onto monitoring well 1 is when you.
Okay, sorry about that. So, it's periodically been happening on both ends too, so I apologize. So monitoring well 1, again, right before we began operation of the system was about 1,100 parts per trillion of this PFAS 6 compounds, and after operation, it went down to 132.8 parts per trillion. This last round, we saw, a little bit of an uptick, but really, still the same substantial decrease that we saw from pre-operation data. And really, the 19 of the 29 monitoring wells, we are seeing some significant decreases in many of the monitoring wells that we were hoping to see, which is good news. The system's been operating really as designed. The last bullet here, we've had some conversations with Mass DP and are proposing to do some remedial system alterations, some minor ones, which I'll get to at the end of this PowerPoint. But in general, the overall news is good, and that the system is operating as designed. And
You just cut out again.
I don't think he can hear you.
I lost you again?
Yeah, you said the system designed as.
Is operating as designed.
Is intended.
Operating as designed, yeah. So if you could actually jump to the next slide. And I apologize, this is a little fuzzy, but essentially the yellow dot in the middle is our recovery well that we're pumping off of. and really it's about 5 million gallons per month, so a significant amount of pumping that's happening. The red here is the cone of depression. When we pump groundwater, it creates a cone of depression and water flows into that. And the zone of capture is really the yellow, and the blue lines are showing an overall groundwater flow direction from sort of southeast to northwest, or right to left across the page. And so really the system as designed and operating is as designed. If you recall back to original phases, this is how we were hoping the system would operate and capture our impacted groundwater, and it's operating as designed. Still with me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, so, and just to jump into a little statistics, if you actually jump to the next couple slides here, what we did was we actually graphed some of the wells in different areas of the site. This is actually some of the wells that are in that red cone of depression area. The blue line there is our most impacted well, MW1, and you can see that after the system operated or began operation on July 5th, the concentrations really dropped off. Again, there was a slight rebound there, but we're really talking about parts per trillion levels. So 10 or so parts per trillion over the analysis. Really, I don't think is significantly is significant, but the overall trend on all of the wells is really.
You just cut out again, Paul.
All the wells.
To capture many of them. And I know it's hard to see there, but many of them are actually at non-detect levels in that cone of depression, because we are actually re-injecting clean water or post-treated water into that area. If you actually bump to the next slide, please. So one of the areas of interest for Mass DP is the dog park area. If you can see from MW 104, the blue line there, it was very elevated in our initial rounds, has been decreasing since. One thing to note here is that in our our August data, there was a little bit of an increase in a few of those wells.
We lost you, Paul.
You gotta wait.
It actually had decreased.
Paul,
Oh, you're talking about what happened in May, it increased, and we lost your sound.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, it wasn't May. It was in August. We had a little bit of an increase. You can see there on a few of the data points, but it actually in November subsequently decreased. So that's good news, and we'll continue to watch this area. But overall, the trends in the dog park area have been significantly decreasing. And if you go to the next slide, similarly, these wells are on the west side of Richardson Road and on the North Chelmsford Water District. And you can see, there've been some increases up until system operation, and then they've been significantly decreasing, especially the wells 119, 120, and 121, which are right on the west side of Richardson Road. So that's right down gradient of where we're treating the groundwater, have shown significant decreases, which is great news. So if you move to the next slide. So one of the things that Mass DEP and us have been evaluating is the system operation and the treatment. And so we actually proposed just some minor alterations. Orders are coming
Paul,
for this. It's really pretty minor.
Paul, you
cut
proposed
off
some
at
minor
minor.
alterations.
I'm so sorry about
No,
this.
it might be our problem, so we apologize.
It was happening throughout your presentation. As I was listening in from 6 o'clock, it was happening on your end as well. So I apologize. But minor system alterations here on request of Mass DEP, and also to proactively address some standard changes, which are coming. Significantly further down. So one of the
Paul, I'm sorry, standard changes, which are coming.
standard changes are coming to decrease the 20 parts per trillion to a much lower level, like potentially 0.04 parts per trillion, very, very low levels. So we're proactively modifying the system using what we have. It's really essentially minor piping changes. We'll be going from in parallel treatment to in series. And essentially what's going to allow us to do is use one granular activated carbon and 2 resin vessels to really treat what we suspect down to non-detect levels. It's been non-detect on the PFAS-6 compounds thus far, but we really want to ensure those levels and really get ahead of this this regulatory change that's coming up. So Mass DEP has approved our changes. Actually, if you go to the next slide, this is a depiction of it. Previously, the water comes into the system. This is a sort of a graphic of our remedial system. The water comes in the green and it actually flows from the outside into the center. It gets treated by carbon on the outside and then resin on the inside to polish the water, and then it discharges in the blue. So the new configuration actually shows the green coming in, goes through the carbon vessel, and then 2 resin chambers, and then out with the blue. So this will help ensure that we're continuing to meet our discharge limits. So, and I guess with that, I'll stop and take any questions. And very much apologize for the audio visual. It's a little challenging.
No visual, you're clear as day.
All right.
How you doing? This is Paul at the North Chelmsford Water. I just had first of all, I want to thank you for that presentation. I think it was great. Got a lot of information off of it. As a lot of you might know, and some might not, I am new with the water district, and I'm still getting briefed on a lot of this. But I do look at your numbers, and I see them going in the right direction. Some come up a little bit, some drop back down. The trends look good, but does Weston or anybody in the board connect numbers slightly increase?
Paul, excuse me, Paul, you cut out on this end after you said, does Weston or anybody on the board? Could you start that again?
Yes, I'm sorry, but it's the same issue over here with like everybody else. Do we know why the numbers would go back up if we keep drawing water to one side? Do the fluctuations? I know some of them plateau a little bit, but we do see slight increases here and there.
Paul,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let me jump in there. So it's a good question. We're absolutely, we started the system in. And a lot of those variations.
Paul, I'm sorry, but you said we started this system and it dropped out.
So yeah, we started the system in July, and we've had 2 rounds of data. So it's still early days of system operation, but a lot of the data, when we look at it, we are dealing with parts per trillion levels, very, very, very low. So some of these.
We're almost done with this topic, right?
The margin of error
Paul,
of the analysis.
Some of these what?
Boy, this is challenging. No, so some of the data, again, it's parts per trillion level, very low levels, and so it could be within the margin of error of both the sampling and analysis is probably the shortest answer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I do understand you guys are early on in your testing. I'm sure you can understand why we just have some concerns with these numbers are still being way above the limits right now. I just have one last question, and maybe you said it, I might have missed it during the cutouts. Do you have the numbers of the treated water going back into the ground?
Yes, absolutely. So as part of the system operation, we sample both the influent and the effluent concentrations. And thus far, all of the effluent concentrations have been non-detect for PFAS-6 compounds.
He's going to kill us.
It's a good place to cut
6
out.
compounds.
Paul, non-detect
Okay, perfect, thank you.
non-detect for PFAS compounds, and then what did you say?
For they're in all so what we're re-injecting after treatment has been all non-detect for the PFAS-6 compounds. So we have had some minor detections of what's called short-change PFAS, but those are unregulated and really it's anticipated. It's what we anticipate to see after several months of operation of the system. So really it's good news for us. We're looking at this as the system is operating and the treatment is operating exactly as designed.
And Paul, you're pumping through about 5 million gallons a month?
It's about 5 million gallons a month. So one of, I should mention this, one of the negatives to reconfiguring the system is we will be decreasing the flow rate just slightly. Currently, we're operating somewhere between 130 to 160 gallons per minute. That pump rate will decrease a little bit to under 100 gallons per minute. And really that's in an effort to help increase the efficiency of what we're capturing. We want to, not pump more water than we need to is probably the easiest way to say it.
Any other questions?
That's all I had. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us.
Good news. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, the next sampling will be next month, Paul, and we'll go from there.
Moving into 2023, we'll be reducing the number of wells as a cost savings to the town. So you won't see quite as much data, but we'll be targeting key wells and happy to report on those results when they come in.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. And Paul, I apologize for our audio issues this evening.
No worries. Thanks so much,
Thanks for your
everyone.
patience.
Okay.
Oh, yep, thank you. For the record, Board Member Dixon is returning to the meeting.
He's out there chatting with John Harrington. Baby.
Come on down.
So our Public Works Director, Christine Clancy, is joining us in person this evening to talk about the sewer capacity credit transfer policy refinement. Thank you, Christine.
Good evening.
Hello.
This is really an outcome of the latest meeting we had was with the tri-board meeting with the select board, the Board of Health, and the planning board, and also public input, and that was in early December. Also DPW, town offices, that's where we gathered comments, spoke at great length that night about some of this particular document, and also some other action items. This document here is the refined document of the sewer capacity credit transfer policy. Some of the updates that I just want to incorporate. So I would say we did some minor tweaks to that draft that was presented that night. So the way that the sewer credit can be established is through removal of infiltration or inflow. One of the edits that was discussed that night and is incorporated into the memo is how would a developer begin that process? And that would be something that the DPW would have a list of potential projects. We're looking at sump pumps or roof leaders. We are looking to start that pilot program to identify potential locations to do sump pump removals. We would create that list, and we would have that list available for developers to potentially do those projects. We also talked about, is that something, would the town do that project? I think the next step is to do the pilot program and establish that list. The other way is also through a deeded conveyance of flow from one property to another, one non-residential property to another non-residential property. That is something that is still allowed in this latest policy. One question that was brought up from, I think, some board members, also from the public, is what if people want to start soon? What's the timeline? How soon could they see this list? We haven't developed that list as of yet, but we did add a language into this document that allows for, a lot of these projects will take some time, sometimes over a year, where they could, if they come to talk to the town, talk to DPW about a needed amount of flow, we could have them sign up, and then they would just have to address so much inflow or infiltration before the certificate of occupants would be issued. So it would allow them to at least start their project, but they just would have to complete the work before the certificate of occupancy is issued. That are the major updates that were, I guess the other was discussed that night was the timeline. I know right now we have submitted for funding through the state for this pilot program so that we can establish the list. And then once we have that funding in place, we're ready to execute that contract. So as of right now, I guess we're waiting on that award, but we're looking at likely a spring time for the gathering of all the data. And then I think before in the fall, we were talking a winter timeline in spring. We're in the winter, so we're probably looking at early spring for the, this is tentatively based on the funding for the analysis, and then having that list developed hopefully in the spring or summer. I don't know if there's any questions about this policy.
So I do, and part of what you just said, so if someone, you had said that if they showed proof of recovering some of their sewer, then you could give them a occupancy certificate or so forth. I mean, does that include commercial facilities that just, like if they want to add on to a building on 129, but they go in and they show that they've put in low-flow toilets and water-saving shower heads, things like that? I mean, is that enough to?
So we did talk about that at that night. That came up about looking at also low flow fixtures, and I think that's something that we want to explore. But as far as being able to save in the capacity we're talking about, because a lot of, I think, development right now, the policy is written that we're allowed a kind of a 500 gallon per day buffer. As far as toilets or other fixtures, the developer could propose something, but that's something that right now I can't go to a Title V manual to say, well, if you put 2 low flow toilets in, what's that savings going to be? A lot of the regulations are right now based off of Title V. So it's something that a developer could propose as part of the calculations. But right now, the way that we have it listed is that we would be looking at sump pumps, roof leaders. We did talk about doing a pilot program, just maybe looking at like this building for an example, swapping out all the toilets and seeing what the actual reduction in flow would be. So that's something we're looking into as well. I did put in the document that in the language, it does say that a reduction in flow, infiltration, inflow, or otherwise approved by DPW. So if a developer was to provide some calculations and showing that reduction, I think it's something we could look at. Does that answer your question? I guess it's hard for us to outline in the document that if you remove so many toilets or so many fixtures, but I think it's something that it really vary. It depends on the space. It's something that would be a proposal to us, and the document does support that. It says infiltration, inflow, or other approved reduction in flow.
So I have a question. It says a developer property owner shall request a specified number of sump pumps needed in writing to accrue the necessary gallons per day. How are you going to determine that?
So that is part of the pilot study. The pilot study will determine how many sump pumps we need. So right now, sump pumps typically are about 200 to 500 gallons a day. Some communities use 500 so each will be giving a allotment to each sump pump, and that will be based on, we do look at the water table. That is part of the pilot study, though, and part of that scope that we have with the consultant, that they will estimate a flow. What we see, the numbers are between 200 gallons per day, 500 gallons a day per a sump pump.
Okay, so you're going to kind of estimate that to be consistent, because as we've kind of said about, this year being so dry, that some pumps probably have not been used near as much as they have in previous years.
Right, so we will have to give an average number. That's why, so if we say 200 or 500, we don't want to give 500 for everything. This is, we know that there'll be dry years. Also, some pumps might be running longer than others. So we want to look at the average and provide that as a figure. It's something that the town engineer we talked about putting a number into the document, but we're not ready to commit to a number yet without doing that pilot study. But we see, in terms of the literature you look up or other towns, it's between 200 and 500. So I don't know if it would be 300, 350, 400. We probably wouldn't put 500 because, like you said, it varies. So when we have that, when we say how many sump pumps, we don't know if we're exactly going to get 350 gallons per day, but that should be the average of the sump pumps that we look at.
Okay, and, you know, you said you've had people express an interest. Is it the developers that have expressed interest, or property owners that, you know, that want their sump pumps corrected, I guess you could say?
The interest of DBW has been, you know, people need additional capacity. So that has been mostly the interest. I don't think we haven't really advertised this yet. I think once we advertise this, I mean, right now it is illegal to have your sewer connect, or your sump pump connected to the sewer. So I think if we promote it as this is not allowed and here's a program where we can help correct it, outside of this program, it is on the responsibility of the property owner.
Okay.
So I'm gonna ask more specifically about projects in town, just because we're all aware of some of the more concerning ones. So we had talked about the Center Village, and when he was in here last time, or when we had that tri-board meeting, we talked about a pilot program. Is that ready to go?
The
Payment in lieu of?
So we did talk about a payment in lieu of that night, and I guess that's part of the pilot program, is to look at the sump pumps and to also really estimate that cost. We thought about putting a number out there. It's just so variable. I don't know if it's 15,000. I don't know if it's 40,000. So we could estimate on the high end, but I think what we came to, the town engineer and I talked about it, and I think it would be better to maybe make a list saying, okay, if you agree to so many sump pumps, then by the issuance of the certificate of occupancy, then we should have a number soon, you know, as in once we have the funds spring, summer. I just don't want to commit to a number right now, because if we say it's only $15,000 a sump pump, and then we go to, then also if by paying, that's something that we would have to procure. We have prevailing wages, whereas a contractor has a different, they can hire whoever they want to do the work. We have to pay prevailing wages, we have to go out to bid. It does end up costing more for the town to do.
You have to go to bid on a $15,000?
Yes, anything over $10,000.
So, and that pilot rate isn't set in stone, though, is it? Like if you did it and 3 months in found that, geez, the average, sub pump replacement's costing us not 15 but 20 grand, and we're only picking up 250 gallons, not 300. Could you can then adjust the cost, for the pilot, correct? Or is it once you set it?
I guess that's why we weren't ready to set it yet. I think the idea was if people want to move forward with the project, we can say, okay, agree to, if you need 1,000 gallons, that's going to be X amount of, so many sump pumps that you agree to get to the 1,000 gallons, and we'll have that list established soon. But DPW would, because I think going through the permitting process, DPW would sign off on, at least if there was an agreement to do the work, then we would allow the work to move forward. So that way it allows some of those projects that really want to start soon to potentially start the work, and then by the time we're hopefully a few months away from having those numbers. We could put together, I'm just afraid that if we say, okay, it's 40,000, because we have to run the cost. I did a similar program, but that was 10 years ago, and it was in Cambridge. Also, the costs right now are a lot different than they were 10 years ago. So I think we need to look at this is part of the pilot program, is to establish estimated flows, estimated costs, and put together that as part of the proposed program.
Okay, so that's Center Village. I know that the restaurant up in North Chelmsford wants to expand, and they're looking at taking over a unit next door, and they're having some problems with sewer calculations. But we know the volume that they're using in their bathrooms, and one of the questions they had was if they would replace the toilets and go to low flow, would that be enough to get them over the hurdle with their sewer calculations? But is that something you could estimate now, just looking at the number of people that are in the restaurant, how many?
So we did look at that. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's based on the numbers of people that threw the numbers well beyond the 500. Because I think they were looking at expanding into another space too. Mm-hmm. And so what we allow is the 500 gallons per day per a connection. So if there were 2 connections, that would be 1,000 gallons per day. But I think if you look at the number of people and per Title V, that exceeds 1,000 gallons. A developer could propose if they have other calculations that they want to show us, we could look at it. As far as, I mean, the only thing is that I have to see the calculations. Right now, Title V doesn't have the information about, well, okay, so if you have one person in a restaurant, I think it's 35 gallons per person. Now, if you switch to a low-flow fixture, does that change to 20 gallons, 25? I don't know that, but it's something that I think the best way would be for us to look at doing a municipal building just to see what we might see for reduction. If a developer and their consultant has a number they want to propose to us with the supporting documentation and calculation, I think it's something we can look at.
Okay. So really, it's 3 more months is what we're probably going to be telling people.
Well, it's once we have the funding. So we've applied for the funding. We're waiting for the funding once we have the funding, the consultant's ready to go. If we get the funding and we have a lot of snow on the ground, that's the only thing. It might be difficult to do some of the inspections if they have to do any dye testing to the sewer. But once we have the funding, we should be able to start the project and wrap it up really within a couple months.
We're hoping to have the funding released by the end of this month. You know, the agencies that the state have acknowledged the applications, and they've got a blizzard of these things from that funding bill, earmark bill. So we're anticipating, because of the timeliness and the use of fundings, you know, that by the end of this month we should have that. And then she said, hopefully by the end of March or April, we'd be at a place. So, and that was why in the policy, which is the draft that she's mentioned on a couple of occasions, we want to give people the ability to proceed with a bit of uncertainty, but at least that way, because any of these projects that we're talking about are going to take months upon months to get the work completed. So at least we're not holding them up from initiating the process. And we think that there's a range, you know, that somebody can reasonably estimate as to what that cost would be. But we don't want to throw out a number and then just be setting a precedent, because what we really want to see is the reduction. We don't want to be taking payment in lieu of and then be sort of sitting on cash without achieving the reduction. So that's why we're not throwing out a payment in lieu of number.
So just to set expectations for a developer who's starting a new project, do you tell them wait until 4 months have passed and we get some of this under our belts?
No, what we would say is, look, if you need to get going, like, as you know, another one was the one on Apollo Drive. And we would basically say, look, you know, instead of putting in that you know, septic system, you know, if you commit that you'll reduce that flow, necessary flow, but before an occupancy permit is issued, and I think one can reasonably, in that scope of financing, get a sense of what that cost is going to be, without us sort of committing to a number of payment in lieu of. Because we don't want to go there. Because you can have somebody walk in with a payment in lieu of tomorrow and say, hey, I want to build 84 residential multifamily units, here's my payment, because they're going to get that level of return from you know, the sale of those units or rental of those units. We don't want to be doing that. We don't want to be sitting on a situation where we've got payment in lieu of but no actual reduction in flow. That's why we really want to say, look, we'll commit to you to allow you to proceed, but we want you to perform that work prior to you completing an occupancy permit.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying, so is the message just to the gentleman in Central Square, go ahead and start?
Yeah, basically.
And then we'll figure it out later?
Yeah, exactly. We'll because we know that by the time they go through the permitting, procurement, construction, and then occupancy, you know, while they're still in that first phase, we should have the answers for them. And I think it's reasonable, you know, given what we've seen in other communities, of what that cost may be within a parameter. Yeah.
And then what does someone like the restaurant owner in North Chelmsford do?
I think the same kind of thing, that they can.
I mean, he could have that square, the place next door done in 2 months.
Yeah.
But are we going to be ready in 2 months to say, yes, you can expand?
Yeah, we're saying, yes, you can expand, but you won't get occupancy until that flow is obtained. So again, we think we'll have those answers within 2 months. You know, so hopefully by, you know, as we said, March or April, we should have those numbers. But we realize that there are lead times. That's what we're trying to basically unjam the blockage so that they can, because by the time somebody comes in, files the permits, you know, lines up contractors, gets the work done. You know,
yeah, I mean, look at the other restaurant downtown. That's still under construction. That's been a while.
Exactly. So that's why we're basically trying not to be the, you know, an obstacle. We're basically saying, look, here's our refined policy, you know, there's every expectation is, from what we see in other communities and what we expect to see here, that this will be able to be achieved.
So if again, the restaurant in North Chelmsford, if he comes in and says to you, we're going from a toilet that's 25% less, or 75% less, it's using 25% of the current volume, and he starts the process, gets the whole thing renovated, and it's done in 2 months, would he be set up for an occupancy permit, or is he still waiting until you guys?
If he presents
Yeah, I
that data
think
to
he have to
DPW.
present it, because also we have to, I mean, then when we look at that first bill, we want to make sure that his calculations are accurate against his inflow, because people aren't just using the bathroom, people are washing.
Have a first bill, and, oh, I see, you'd want to see the current capacity drop.
Yes, so I guess the thing is, we look at the calculations, and we see if, is that something that makes sense? And is it something that has also some technical engineering or calculations submitted? And if those calculations seem reasonable, that we will actually see a reduction, then I think it's something that we can look at. And that's why the policy is written where it says, or otherwise approved by DPW. But then the calculations have to be supported. So I think just saying a toilet is, every time you flush a toilet, it's X percent less, or percentage less. What volume of flow does that toilet actually provide into your bills? Because he has to look at other water uses that they
Right.
use. So that all.
Bills quarterly, right?
Well,
Actually, twice a year, we bill.
we bill sewer twice a year. They do quarterly.
So you
So he
have
can
to wait.
provide, he can provide the evidence to the DPW on a
After a
quarterly
quarterly
basis.
bill,
Yeah.
so you'd have to have it, you'd have to have the work done to the low flows, wait a quarter, show that the water usage went down, and then you'd be able to get capacity.
We would grant him the capacity, but the understanding is you've got to produce that result. So it's no different than if somebody will grant the capacity and they exceeded it, right? We would basically say, hey, look, you've got to act now to further to bring that down to the regulation. So that's what I'm saying. We're allowing somebody to proceed. It's just with the understanding is that you've got to change that flow, and then in accordance with the policy, if you exceed that flow, then you've got to correct it. Otherwise, you're subject to the penalties, fines, and so forth. So I think that gives somebody, as we said, if you present the information to DPW, again, this isn't the only place in town that has low-flow toilets and everything else,
Right.
or the only community in the state, then, and there's a reasonable assessment that DPW is saying is they'll approve it, with the understanding is, well, then at the end of the day, your flows have got to meet the required standard. So we think it gives somebody a reasonable ability to move forward.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's what I think that's the input in the assessment from where we were at the last meeting, is you've got people who are ready to move forward with investments. We don't want to preclude that. It's just what the understanding is, at the end of the day, you've got to meet those standards.
Right.
And I think I think the expectation of everybody is that by one way or another, they're going to do it because they're going to have to. Meaning because that's what they sign on to, that, we'll commit to that flow, whether it's so many sump pumps, low flow devices, or what have you. And that's what we saw with the, I'll give you the real world example. We have where Bob's Coins was in the center, right? They came in and put in a nail salon, and then what their issue is, hey, the Title V code, and Christine can explain it better than I can, but
Sure.
let me explain to you how we're being reasonable. Go ahead.
So Bob's Coin Shop, there's a new owner, a nail salon, and I don't have the calculations in front of me, but we looked at Title V, and Title V does not have a category for a nail salon. It has a category for a hair salon. So we looked, and that was the closest category to assign for this new owner, nail salon. So we said, okay, you need, I think it came up to like 700, an additional 700 gallons. Because Bob's Coin Store is only using 12, 15 gallons a day. And the new owner said, I know for a fact that I do not use that much in my nail salon. I currently have 5 seats in Lowell, almost the exact same business. And so she actually showed us her usage in Lowell. We looked at that as this was a unique situation because it wasn't really fair to maybe put this owner into a hair salon category. There is a difference between going to a nail salon versus going and getting your hair done. There's a lot more water use in when you're getting your hair done. So we allowed this owner to go in with the 5 seats, or it was a total of 9 additional chairs, and using that capacity that she has in her essentially identical location or a very similar location in Lowell. So that was an example where it was real data that was provided to us. And it was unique in that situation because there wasn't a category that we can put this property owner or this new owner into. With restaurants, it's a little different. There is a clear clear indication that if it's a sit down, it's 35 gallons per seat. If it's takeout, I think it's or cafe, it's like 20 gallons per seat. So there's different categories there.
So what did she show you as a volume for, was it a 5-seat or 9-seat?
It was 9 seats. Sorry, so it was
9 seats in Lowell.
So we actually went back and said you can only put in 5 seats based on the 500 gallons, and so she said I can actually put 9 in with the 500 because we allow everyone to go up 500 gallons per day. That's essentially the buffer. And she
was at 12, and you allowed her to go to 500 or 512 or whatever.
512, 515 is what we allowed her. So she has her, whatever was at Bob's Coin Shop plus the 500. Whereas when we first looked at it under the nail salon, we were looking at 700, 800, and we said, we can't give you that. We can only give you an additional 500. And she's confident. And actually, I think her usage was around 300. It was actually less than the 500.
So now will you ask for substantiation after the fact?
Yes. So we have that where we've asked that after that first quarter, we have to verify. And I mean, we do have fines, and so that if she exceeds it, she's going to have to correct her setup so that she falls within the allotted amount of 515 gallons. But she's confident that she will be there because of the business she has in Lowell.
Question about procedure. So that lady comes to town, she's looking at Bob's Coin. Did she know there was a sewer issue prior to buying the building?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. The way that when she called DPW, she was putting in 9 seats and she didn't see it as an issue. So my guess is no.
Right. And does the building inspector tell them they have to?
Yeah, and what we do is we have weekly meetings. Literally every Wednesday morning, we meet. Public Works Director, Building Inspector, and so forth. And we go over what's active. So, for example, right now, we're discussing what's going on with the cafe, common victual license off of Fletcher Street, where the convenience store was at the corner. So the Board of Health is there, Public Works is there, Building Commissioner is there. So those discussions are going on in real time on a weekly basis. So that sort of addresses something, sort of somebody's sort of blindsided, or we're not, one hand doesn't know what the other department's doing.
That's good.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah, so the building inspector's running everything by sewer department,
Exactly.
letting them know.
Yeah, there's also permits. There's a lot of permits that are sent to DPW for sign off. So, I mean, those are just more through the system. But I think for this particular instance too, it was brought up at that Wednesday meeting where we realized we had a potential capacity issue.
Got it.
And we're doing that right now. There's an interest in a brew pub in the center, as we know. It's not commonly known, not yet. But we've had meetings where we sit in the room, and DPW's there, Board of Health's there, Building Commissioner, and then that's, again, the whole thing. So that way, everybody knows.
Yeah. Did you say you discovered at the Wednesday meeting there was an issue, or wasn't?
No, we knew. So I think it came up at that meeting. That's where we were running the numbers prior to that meeting. The woman had called DPW. I don't know exactly what caused her. I think she had spoken to Jose. Jose said you have to talk to DPW. And then at that Wednesday meeting, that's where we tried to vet out what do we do. And that's where we talked about the categories. Well, is it really fair to put this person into the category of a hair salon? And it was hard for us to say, well, that was the closest category. But with her proof from a bill from really the same type of business, same amount of seats, and she owns it, so she said she's going to be running it essentially the same, very similar way.
I'm sure we're learning as we go here.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
The side of the story I got was she was told after she put in the seats.
Well,
but the fact is, we're learning, and now the process is in place, and that's good. That's why I was kind of digging a little bit further.
She was in the middle of construction, we'll say, but we weren't signed off.
There's more to the story about her interacting with plumbing inspector, electrical, and building inspector, that's more of a building department thing, but I'm talking about, yes. So that's,
Yeah, we're figuring it out.
but, well, yeah, but also, all I'll say is that there's more to the story in terms of they've also got to tell us what they're doing in the entirety as well, and that became another issue. But yes,
Got it.
But no, the important thing is we're working in real time, communicating across departments, but also with applicants in terms of knowing, so that way they can get moving. Whether it's nail salon, brewery, brew pub, and so forth to move this along. And as we said, we're as a way at the immediate time until the next 3 months when we have more concrete data, we're allowing people to proceed with, as long as they understand that you can proceed, but you
gotta
won't
prove
get
it.
occupancy until you meet with the threshold, which we don't think should be a time constraint because it'll be what it takes to do projects like on Apollo Drive or in the center. We'll clearly be able to go there. So therefore, they can go to the regulatory boards, whether it's the planning board and so forth. And yes, DPW will sign off saying, yeah, there's the commitment.
Okay.
That's good.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
Okay, next up, we have discussion regarding our civic engagement goal, which we said we wanted to revisit two aspects of that, 9A and 9C, in the January-February timeframe. So we just wanted to start the discussion this evening on kind of path forward and where we go with each of these. So the first one was collaboration, and this was to look at ways we could improve our communication and collaboration with other boards and committees to better support them. I think, Mark, you were the one that put this out initially. But
I mean, way back, we talked about more collaboration between the boards on planning and strategic direction, but,
this is different, I think.
yeah, exactly.
So the
I wonder if this
measurement was to calibrate on historical approaches and discuss potential new adaptations for improvement.
I'm just trying to think of where this might have come from, and I'm wondering, Mark, was it rooted in your discussion of sewer flows with ZBA, and I don't know, I'm trying to,
I think it was more of a general discussion of, we have our liaison assignments, right? Is there anything more that we should be doing to help support the success of other boards and committees? Or would we just be getting in the way? There was a conversation, I think, in the summer when we were looking at this, or in September, about do we invite them to come present at their option? Or would that just be considered onerous for them to do that? And I know board committees that we've appointed, we invite to come here and present. But is that ringing any bells? So, I mean, I suppose one thing we could do is just schedule a discussion or ask the committees and boards to give us some written input, and we could look at that and then schedule invite them and schedule a discussion. Maybe the answer is no, there's nothing more we want you to do, or you could do A, B, and C better. I don't want to assume.
At the holidays, I was out with one of the committees, I won't say which one, and they hadn't put out minutes in years. And they're just wondering, how do I get started again, and how do I get them posted? And, we talked a little bit about it, but I think it's things like that, maybe things that have kind of drifted on them. And they're just looking for, how to get kind of back lined up. And that's one issue, but there could be lots of other ones just around their initiatives and what their direction is and so forth. But, I mean, that's all I can think of.
So this was, I'll just offer a thought. This was based on a hypothesis that maybe there's some things we could be doing to better support our boards and committees. I would ask for feedback before we assume that some action is required, because like I said, I don't want to get in the way either.
I think there's a lot of times when we, especially with new committees and maybe when there's a lot of turnover, sometimes somebody will be appointed as the chair and they don't even really know how to run a meeting. And I think maybe we should, offer something like that, maybe a 2-hour seminar on what you need to do as far as calling a meeting to order, how you should.
Obligations of a chairperson.
Yeah.
Robert's Rules 101.
Yeah,
And Policy 101.
And part of that, reminding them about minutes, that, you only have a limited time to get minutes done, and what the form should be, because there's some people that try to do basically a transcription of the entire meeting, and then there's some that they.
8 points.
Yeah.
Meeting, everyone showed up.
Yeah, and they just
Voted.
barely cover
Adjourned. Right.
And there's some that don't have them, right?
Right.
So what do you think about asking for some written input by a certain date, and then we can decide what we do from there?
Not that I want to volunteer, but you could probably ask the boards to answer a 5-question or even a 3-question survey from the select board. Do you feel like you need more support? Do you feel like your board is useful and a benefit to the town? And do you feel, what else could the board do to help you? 3 questions and see what your responses are. Because I'll tell you, when I first started going to all my liaison meetings, I was surprised at how many boards would say to me, "What are you doing here?"
Right.
And we haven't seen anybody here in a couple of years. And why are you here? Are we in trouble?
Same here.
And then it became, I just sat sort of on the side and listened. And if they needed me to go to Paul with something, I would. And that doesn't really often happen. But there are some boards I know, that kind of said, we don't feel like we have any clout in town. I'm kind of wondering why we meet. But, I feel terrible for that type of response.
Right. Does anybody have any thoughts about Ken's 3 questions?
Sound good. That's a good idea.
That's one way to solicit input.
Exactly.
Keep it simple, though.
My thought would be, since some of the boards and committees only meet like once a month, to ask for input by the end of February. That way, hopefully, we'll hit everybody.
But if you're going to ask for input, we've got to commit to do something, because the worst thing you do is ask for a survey and then don't respond to anything.
Right, we're gonna get the responses and then see where the,
Where the needs are, yeah.
right, where the needs are.
Even if it's just a summary back to all the boards, this is what we heard, everybody's happy. You got to give it, we're
Yep.
just going to make sure we give it something back.
Does that work?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, and then 9C was for youth and young adults.
So what are we sending those 3 questions? Is that what we're doing?
What were the 3 questions?
What could the select board do to help you be a better committee or board? Is there anything else? The last one was, is there anything else that you feel we could help with? And you feel your board is important in town, and, are you, I don't know, supported or needed?
Do you feel that your board's important in town? I mean, they wouldn't exist, I think, if we didn't.
Well, I don't know. I'll tell you, the tree committee sometimes says to me, like, why are we here?
Okay.
You know what I mean? They have comments, and I don't think they feel like they're heard. I know they're having a little bit of, this year, they're with the town common, they're
Yeah.
feeling a little more involved.
So the question is more, do you feel the importance of your board or committee is valued? Not, do you feel that you're important?
I think we should come up with 3 good questions and then send that out.
Okay, we're trying to finalize the questions.
All right, so
So what do you have, Paul?
Is there anything else the select board should help with, was the 3rd question, right? I got that one nailed down. And I think the first question is, what assistance can the select board town manager provide to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the second one was, do you feel the board has
Value.
value or significance?
I would make that second question the first question.
Okay.
Do you feel that
your board
the importance of your board or committee is valued?
was affecting the town?
Huh?
Or has direct effect in the town?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's a nicer way to put it. Do you feel your board has direct effect in the town and
Yeah,
is being
but
heard?
the reason I said is, so maybe it's both, Ken, but do you feel that your board has direct effect on the town it's like a challenge question to them.
Yeah.
And what you're trying to say is people feel that they don't feel like they're valued or they're viewed as important, and they're not brought in. So that's why I was trying to change it a little bit.
Yeah, you're better with questions than I am, so I'll let you. I agree. You understand
I
what
don't
I'm
think
trying to get
people
to.
would-
I don't know how to ask it.
I'm sorry, Paul, I wasn't taking notes.
No, that's all right.
So
No,
what's
do
the
you- do
first,
you-
what's the first one about valued,
Do you feel that your board or committee is valued?
okay? And then the second one is,
How can the select board and town manager support your board or committee?
better, you're right, better.
Better, yeah, better, yeah.
And then what's the third one?
Is there anything else the select board can help? Can
Yeah.
assist you?
Well,
right? Or
Is
that
there
kind
any
of-
think
feedback
those-
you'd like to give to the
Is there
select
any,
board?
any further, right, is there
Any other feedback?
Any other feedback? Okay, that's all, any other
For the
feedback?
town manager or select board? Put targets on both their backs.
I think we need to have something in there about, do you feel that you were given enough information to, when you joined this board or something like that, or this committee? Kind of like what I'm getting at, you know, some people don't know how they should act in a meeting,
Is your position on the board what you thought it would be?
something like that. I mean, but are we going to do it just to the chair of each
It's just
committee?
to the chair.
Yeah.
Well, the chair, yeah, and the chair will schedule it into one of their meetings. That's why I was suggesting do it by the end of February. Then they have time.
I know from when this goes out, I'll try to then make all my next liaison meetings, so if they have questions, we can explain to them what we're trying to get at.
And you might also do that, you know, indicate that if they want to talk one-on-one with somebody instead of writing to
Right.
have, you know, talk
If you
to
have any
their
questions
liaison.
or
Yeah,
concerns, please relay it.
I mean, I'd be happy to get on the phone or with
Yep.
their liaison. They can talk
Yeah, maybe you just
one-on-one
put
with
that
their
at the bottom.
liaison.
If you have any questions or concerns about this quick survey, please reach out to your
To your
liaison.
liaison.
Yeah.
If you don't know who your liaison is, please
Well,
reach
and
out to
by the
them
way,
all.
they
We
don't,
could- we
well,
could
they don't,
include
they
that.
don't all have the liaison, so your liaison or.
Yeah, and include a list like that. just like this.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
not everybody
town
has
manager.
liaisons assigned,
Yeah, right, or you could say, or, I mean, you don't have to go to
Or-
your liaison,
or me,
or
whatever.
anyone, or any select board member or
yeah,
town
any,
manager.
any board member. Are we okay with that?
Yeah.
All right. So the youth and the young adults, this was looking at how do we increase engagement. And so after we set this goal, so the two measurements have to do with engaging the high school civics class or looking at other ways to engage. I had a quick conversation with Dr. Lang, and he mentioned that there is someone on the school faculty that works with the civics group.
So I didn't throw this out there, but every year I speak to the civics class, and they
Yeah.
call me, so I'm doing it Wednesday.
Okay.
Someone in the civics class says Julie, I can't think of her last, but says
What's
she
her
reached
name?
out to the select board. So I think maybe if we went and spoke to every civics class,
Yeah, I agree. So there was that component, and then I had also had at least one resident reach out to me saying, hey, when you get going on this, I'd really be interested in providing input. So I don't know, I think it would be good to bring like the high school civics faculty member or some of the students in to speak with us about their ideas. I don't know what else you want to do in order to just get informed. Or maybe what we do is we pick a meeting date that they can accommodate and then also invite other members of the public to come in and share ideas, have just like a listening session on how we can better engage our youth and our young adults. You know, I'd love to hear from, we have college students that are on at least one committee in town, and I'd love to hear like what kind of roped you in and kept your interest to do that, so.
I could ask her on Wednesday if she's willing to come to the
Yes,
board.
so that's what I'm saying, Ken, is let's get a date from her, and then we can, on that same agenda, invite other public input on the topic. Does that make sense?
I know seem to get involved in the elections. Because
They-
one year, at least when I ran, they sponsored one of the debates.
They did a debate, and
I
then,
got involved with them quite a bit offline.
right, and then the next year, they did a questionnaire for the elections,
It
so.
seems like it depends on what year it is as to how many people they have that are involved in it and how much they're involved. It seems like it changes.
I mean, there's
So
definitely
we-
interest there, because they do ask a lot of questions. And
Oh,
you only
yeah.
have 35 minutes in a class, or I think whatever it is, to answer all these, and they have a lot of questions.
Right. So Paul, or Ken, do you want me to reach out through Dr. Lang and get a date from this person?
Or is Ken going to see
Or-
that person on Wednesday?
See her on Wednesday, and I email her all the time, so I can ask her.
Okay, so
That's it.
let's find out, and we need some lead time because we want to allow time to schedule public input as well.
I can get a feel from the classroom if they would be interested in coming.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
I'll send you an email with the follow-up on Wednesday afternoon.
Okay.
Right.
And I'll dig out the residents who have reached out to me as well and just let them know what we're thinking about scheduling. Okay. I don't know, Paul or Pat, who wants to talk about this next one? I'm
Pat
not
has to be
familiar
on.
with it. so-
I'll turn it to Pat. She has to be on the agenda.
Okay, so this is the Digital Equity Planning Program.
Correct. NEMCOG is partnering with MAPC, the Boston Region Planning Agency, to put forward this planning program, grants for this planning program, and it's a free technical assistance program. Basically, they would come into your community and do an evaluation of broadband accessibility within the community, both geographically and demographically and any other way that you could imagine. If you read the sample report that was done for Everett and Chelsea and I forget what other town, basically they would take, however long it takes to set up listening sessions, the charrettes or whatever they're called, and they would talk to people about what they need to be more effective in using the internet, whether that is faster internet, cheaper internet,
Training.
hardware, equipment. So it's basically wide open, I guess you could say. And the Mass Broadband Institute is the one that's funding all of these opportunities for communities to find out this information. You have to meet certain criteria, but according to NEMCOG, Chelmsford and every NEMCOG community meets the criteria. It has to do with income level and other demographic information. So NEMCOG is looking to just get a sense for which communities want to go forward with this, if they want to do one individually, or if they want to be part of a regional initiative with it. So I said I'd bring it before this board. I mean, I think there's no downside to it. We would get a good sense for how well the town is covered and where there might be some areas for improvement. And they would help us, if they did identify some opportunities, they would help us with funding that they expect to be provided by the state and federal government in the not-too-distant future. If the funds are there and we have a need for it and we have a use for it, I don't see any reason not to do it. So, I mean, it's kind of a quick overview. I don't know if you read any of the documentation that came with it. I don't know if you have any questions. I don't have a lot of answers to the questions. I know they want to try to do something sooner rather than later, while there's still, the funding is available and the bandwidth from NEMCOG and MAPC to do the different communities.
So they do all the legwork on the assessment of the need?
Correct.
Or do they wind up calling Paul's office for all kinds of data?
They, basically, they ask for a point person, but they try to keep that interaction to a minimum. There might be some, town-specific information that they would need. But, as far as like census information and things like that, they have that. In fact, I was looking at the application form today, and there's actually links to where, as you're filling out the application, you can actually go and find out the information that you need to fill out the application, such as census tracts and, what percentage of your population is below the 300% of poverty level. Yeah, there would be obviously some, you want it to be specific to the community, so obviously I think we want to have somebody from the staff here. I don't know who that would be, Paul, if, possibly even could be somebody from this board, depending on what level of detail they're looking for and suggestions. We might even point them towards the housing authority, because maybe there's a need there on the, some of the housing authority's projects where there may not be sufficient bandwidth, may not, maybe setting up hotspots, different places around town would be a need. So, like I said, I don't have all the answers yet, and obviously it's one of those situations where, you kind of get out of it what you put into it. They would notify the stakeholders, they would have listening sessions. They would find out, if you looked at that report, they actually went around and tested the upload and download speeds of the internet in these communities, and found that they weren't what they would claim to be. Comcast was the major service provider there, and they weren't providing what they claimed to be providing in all their literature. So I don't know.
Maybe that would solve our glitches that we have
there you
today.
go.
Paul, do you have any thoughts on
No,
this?
I don't see a downside to it. Like I said, NIMCOG is really, with the new leadership, professional leadership at NIMCOG, they seem to be very much trying to engage the communities to work together and also to seek funding. And I think this is the latest example of what they're trying to do.
Right.
So I don't see a downside as to trying to work through NIMCOG on this initiative, because it's free technical assistance, and it could provide a benefit to seniors or people of low income or others who, and provide, broadband equity, so.
Yeah, I think your question was the key question.
Right, I don't want to say yes, and then it
Exactly.
is some big taxing
Then you're
burden
getting
to our already
third of a
overstretched
person.
employees.
Yeah, it's stretched out already, so. Other than that, I think it's a good idea to do it. Because there is money coming down the line. This kind of a report is what's going to get that for you.
Do you need a vote?
They do want to vote, yes. They want that a majority of the select board
Excuse me.
supports the program.
So do you want me to make a motion to support the Massachusetts Broadband Institute Digital Equity Planning Program
Through NIMCOG.
through NEMCOG? That's my motion.
Okay.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Well done, Pat.
Thanks.
Government motion.
Okay, next up, Paul was kind enough to capture the list of legislative topics that we identified at our last meeting, and we just said we were going to take another look at this meeting to finalize it for the meeting on the 23rd. Anybody have any comments or changes to the list? I think it looks pretty
Oh,
good.
did it look good?
Spot on.
And there's a lot of interrelations there, obviously. So,
The only thing I would add, and I'd ask the board to consider, is, it just came out today, the legislature just got seated, and at the State House, and they've just come out with rules, and they're returning to their normal bill filing deadline of the end of January, as opposed to, it was pushed out further in COVID for legislation. And the only town legislation we do have, which was a follow-up from the fall town meeting, was that home rule petition regarding the deputy fire chief removal from civil service. The only thing is, with the delegation here, you could ask them to file it. Where it goes from there, as we just saw with Tingsboro and these other things, may take quite a while, but I think the board should consider whether to ask the delegation to file the legislation, which was a follow-up from the fall town meeting. What'll happen is it'll get filed along with the thousands of other bills. Eventually, you get assigned a committee, and eventually someday there'd be a hearing on it, and then it would go from there. But that is the only other thing that occurred to me over the weekend as I was thinking of the discussion this evening.
The only other thing that occurred to me, Paul, was on the additional state housing requirements. Should we say something about additional state housing requirements and impact on infrastructure?
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause that's
Just
the
to put it into
interpretation.
context, because that's really what the comment is, not,
Yeah, you could even reference MBTA housing in there too, I suppose.
Okay.
yeah.
But that is, isn't it?
Okay.
Well, it's kind of, you get the MBTA, and then there's an overarching,
Okay.
I think, initiative by the governor now to do other things, so. And I just think that, we've got to be honest with them
As far
about
as this,
the stress on our infrastructure that we
question.
already have.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So I will modify that, and I'll put it in a little more verbose form tomorrow to the representatives and senator and so forth who'll be coming. Do you want me to add the home rule petition to that, or?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, I just don't want, okay, all right, I will do that then. And I'll copy,
Town meeting voted for it.
okay, all right, and I'll copy the chair on the correspondence that goes out, but we should be fine. Okay, thank you.
All right, so now we're at town manager reports.
I'll try to be efficient. First one is the citizen petition warrant articles for Springtown meeting. The deadline passed last Tuesday. There were no citizen petition articles submitted. The only thing that's sort of outstanding, Virginia, and you and I, because we were on a call with Mary Donovan, she has not followed up in, providing me with any information. That was sort of a hybrid. Remember, it was a citizen petition she had submitted back several weeks ago, but yet council said it wasn't written in proper legal form. And then we spoke to her, and she was going to come in and give me the list of parcels, but I haven't heard from Mary since.
But
before the
technically, she
holidays.
did submit it in time, right?
Right. And so
Okay.
I'm not looking to box her out. All I'm just saying is that issue hasn't been resolved because she hasn't followed up with our conversation.
But just to kind of, I guess what you're saying is there were no additional
Right,
petitions filed.
Exactly.
But hers is still active.
right,
And it's a question of
yeah.
getting it ready.
Yeah, so hopefully
All right.
she'll have something within the next month or so that we can get it on the final warrant that you'll be signing next February, so. The other thing to note relating to town meeting is the Attorney General's office has provided the town with written approval on a letter that was dated December 21st, 2022, for the 3 fall annual town meeting zoning articles that had to do with the warehouse definition, the distribution center, and then the use regulation table. So those have been approved, they've been posted by the constable, and now they'll go to general code to be then put into the formal part of our bylaws that are available online in the community. So that was approved. The Oddfellows building, the Brookwalk easement, I just provided you with a copy of the plan, just so you can know that this is actively moving with discussions from the DPW, Community Development. I think it's going to go next to the Conservation Commission because it does need conservation approval. We have involved the Tree Committee as well in terms of tree safeguards and planting and maintenance and protection. So I just wanted to let the board know that this continues to move forward. It also is going to go to CPC for funding at Springtown meeting, because I think the estimate that I provided for you is, with a contingency, it's probably around $40,000 of work. So the CPC is scheduled to meet a week from Wednesday on the, I guess that would be the 19th, or the, so or the 18th, I'm sorry, the 18th. And so I just wanted the board to know that's moving forward. On the December sewer flows, I provided the data that came from DPW last week. December's flow was up to 74.15 million gallons per day of flow. And what I did is I also provided you the historic data. If you go back 4 years, December is a month of heavier flow. And also, the rainfall in December was still below the normal rainfall for December. So again, we'll just keep monitoring, keeping an eye on this. But, clearly, it's the only month so far in this year that we've been in the 70s. So we'll see. Now, so far, January's been a wetter month, and we'll keep you updated. The next item is the Economic Development Bill earmarks. As I mentioned here earlier, we have, when Christine Clancy was here, we have submitted to the state the required paperwork form, which is basically contact information and so forth. We've received acknowledgement of that. I'm hoping to tell you at a meeting later this month that we've received funding and ability to proceed. So that's ongoing. NIMCOG call for concepts. This was the form of DLTA, or technical assistance. I just wanted the board to know the deadline for that is, you had this in your last meeting, is I think it's January 20th, which is before your next meeting. I just want the board to be aware that it appears that what's going to be sought, and it really come through community development, through Evan Belansky, is we'll ask for assistance with the compliance with the MBTA technical communities, communities' housing requirements, which is, we'll be submitting on the dozens of other communities the initial compliance plan this month, but then this would provide us with the assistance on how the town can conform with that state requirement. The second one I'm hearing in discussing with Evan is he thinks he's going to ask for assistance with the housing production plan of the community, because it's been a couple of years since that's been looked at. And then the last one is, we think there may be a submission for environmental sustainability, the idea of providing some assistance in terms of whether it's tree planting or canopy cover and so forth, or how, and this will come probably with the assistance of members of the tree committee and so forth, is how can we act as good students to address the issues of the, I guess, climate change and the issue of the, pavement warming and so forth in the community. So again, we expect there could be up to 3 submittals next week.
Did that email that talked about tree cover in the town go out to everybody on the board?
Yes.
I saw it.
I believe so, yeah.
I was just curious on that. I mean, it gave us about an 8% reduction in the canopy, but my question immediately was where?
Yeah, because
Where is it occurring? Is it something that, has been done privately? Is it?
And I think what it is it's different data sources, and I think that may be the issue, because we all did the same thing. I spoke to Christine Clancy about this.
Yeah,
Like, how could we have had that? Because what would have happened over that short of a period of time? And so we think the problem is you're only as good as your data. And I think what's happening is it appears that he may be citing 2 different data sources for tree canopy cover, and that could be the issue. I think the global issue, we all understand. We want to increase tree canopy and so forth, but
But you say that, Paul, but throughout the Westlands, like in my neighborhood, 10 years ago, my whole neighborhood was 75-foot tall pine trees, and they're all gone.
They're all gone.
They're all gone.
Yeah, I just went to Harvard Vanguard today, saw the giant trees all out front are all gone. I cut them all down.
I mean, even if you go to the Route 3 over exchange on Stedman, the plumbing company that moved in, they clear cut the entire property, both sides.
Yeah, it would just be good to know.
Right, that's what we want
Details
to
around
have.
that.
And I plan on attending the tree committee meeting on Thursday night, and we'll
Yeah.
try to flush it. And Christine's going to be there as well, so we want to better understand this. And again, what is the cause of this? I don't think it's because the town's out there cutting trees left and right.
I don't think so either.
No, I don't either.
But, and I know there's been, we really want to get a clear definition of the data, and then are there some steps that the town can take to, preserve this? Because you're right, you don't want to go the other way. Increase our cover, right.
Right, I don't think, every 2 weeks, I see a tree cutting crew at a private residence in this town, taking down a lot of trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Right. Okay. And then the last thing is, I want to publicly acknowledge, I know I've notified the board, that the Lowell 5 Cent Savings Bank donated $3,000 to the public safety initiatives of the community, half of which go to the police department, half to the fire department. So really just wanted to publicly acknowledge their generosity, to support the initiatives of public safety in the community. That concludes my report. I do have one appointment. to the Conservation Commission, and that is to appoint Peter Spahn for a term ending June 30th, 2023. Peter came in, he's very excited. I've shared his information with some members of the commission. They're excited to have somebody with his background in engineering on the commission, so I'd ask for your formal approval of the appointment of Peter Spahn to the Conservation Commission.
I was reached out to, too,
Yeah.
by the people saying that this is a great addition.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'll make a motion to approve Peter Spahn to an unexpired 3-year term ending June 30th, 2023 for the Conservation Commission.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Next up, we have meeting minutes. First is the joint meeting with the school committee and the finance committee on December 12th. Are there any amendments before we take a motion? If not, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the Select Board joint meeting minutes with the school committee and the finance committee from the December 12th, 2022 meeting as presented.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. And next up, we have the regular meeting minutes from December 19th. Are there any amendments? And if not, I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve the Select Board regular meeting minutes from December 19th, 2022.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. An announcement on determination of releasability of executive session minutes. The minutes of December 19th, 2022 have been released, and the minutes for December 5th, 2022, segments 1 and 2 are held not for release. Okay, next up, we have the MMA resolution and voting delegate.
Nominate, Pat Williams. She usually does it, I guess. That's what you want me to do?
If you'd like to.
Well, I mean, were you looking for nomination?
Is anybody else going to be at the meeting? Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Pat, do you accept the nomination?
Sure.
So George is nominating Pat as the voting delegate for the MMA. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0. And next up, we have to nominate a voting delegate for the MIA Annual Members Business Meeting. Are you going to be there?
George? I'll nominate Pat.
Second.
Okay. Pat, do you accept the nomination? Okay. Do we need a motion to vote on?
We just did.
You just get a
Okay,
motion and a
all those in
second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, sorry. Liaison reports and referrals. Mark?
No, I'm all set, thank you.
George passes. Ken?
I'm good.
Pat?
Yeah, just a couple of things. Since our last meeting, there has been one ribbon cutting that we attended for Crack Hot Sauce, which is located up in the Mills up in North Chelmsford. They gave us samples, and
Wasn't bad.
It was hot.
it wasn't
No, it
that hot.
wasn't. It actually wasn't.
Different-
No,
yeah,
we did
different-
ghost peppers, right?
Different levels.
And we walked away without a problem.
Hotness, yes. And the other thing, a couple weeks ago, we lost Library Director Becky Herman, who was in that position for over 21 years in Chelmsford. She was an amazing person. She was creative, innovative, an inspirational leader, and she always challenged her staff to find a way to yes. And Becky Herman is going to be missed. That's all I'll say.
Thank you, Pat. I have a few things from the Board of Assessors. They want to remind everyone that in your public tax bills that have been sent, there are property tax exemption guidelines for fiscal year 2023. It's the yellow insert in the bills. And if you feel you qualify for exemptions, exemption forms must be received in the assessor's office postmarked no later than April 1st. In addition, the assessors are encouraging everyone to review their tax bills carefully with respect to their property valuation. And if you feel that your property is overvalued Any requests for abatement with the assessor's office must be filed and postmarked no later than February 1st to be considered. If you have any questions or need guidance, you can contact the assessor's office at 978-250-5220 or Frank Reen at freen, R-E-E-N, at chelmsfordma.gov. From the Board of Health, they're encouraging everyone to get a flu shot if you haven't gotten one already. And they are still doing walk-in flu shots every Tuesday from 4 to 6 p.m., or you can call for an appointment outside of that time frame. The Health Department would also like everyone to know that they are doing free Narcan training on February 7th. There will be 2 sessions at 1 p.m. and at 6 p.m. There's a flyer posted on the Health Department website and also on the Chelmsford Board of Health Facebook page. Narcan is used to save the lives of those who are overdosing from opioids, and anyone who attends will receive Narcan free. You can register at www.chelmsfordma.gov. Class sizes are limited, and if you have any questions, call the Health Department at 978-250-5241. From the Conservation Commission, they are going to be starting up monthly conservation walks around the reservations in town, and the Conservation Commission members will be meeting at 9 a.m. on a given Saturday morning at a given site parking lot, and members of the public will be welcome to join them for about 45 to 60 minutes. They did a walk on Saturday at Oak Hill and Bill Edge, and it was mostly procedural, but they also saw some nature, including a beautiful red fox out at Oak Hill. So the scheduling of the dates and places and public notifications will be coming. They're still working out the details, but you might just want to keep an eye on that if you're interested in it. This Wednesday on January 11th, the Planning Board public hearings include a proposed subdivision at 264 Groton Road and continued public hearings for the warehouse building proposal at 270 Billrica Road and the building addition at 250 Apollo Drive. And the Vinyl Square Strategic Action Plan Committee would like to invite anyone from the public who's interested in their next meeting this Thursday, January 10th at 7 p.m. It's going to be a hybrid meeting at Town Hall and also with Zoom access, so you can check the agenda for that. And that's all I have. I will take a motion for the adjournment. It is 8:06 p.m.
I'll make a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Police Patrol Officers Union and to discuss strategy with respect to the collective bargaining with the Firefighters Union not to return.
Second.
Mark?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
And I vote aye.